I call this board meeting of Havre Public School District 16 and A to order. Will Tyler please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll? Would you call the roll?
Yeah, so everybody is here, present, except for Mr. Johnson.
And I think, does anybody miss three or more? You would.
I do not know. Sorry.
I don't believe so. Welcome to the July 9th meeting of the Havre School District Board of Trustees. A copy of tonight's meeting agenda is on the table near the door. At this meeting, the board takes official action on agenda items. Items of information and discussion may also be on the agenda. Comments will be solicited from the audience throughout the meeting. Following introduction of the agenda item, the board chair will recognize those who wish to speak to the item. If you have comments, please come to the microphone so that the board can hear you. Following input from the public on a given item, the board may ask questions, then public input will cease and board deliberations will begin. Board is bound by district policy, negotiated agreements, and Montana statute. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of involving members of the public in its meetings. The board also recognizes the statutory and constitutional rights of the public to participate in government operations. The board would like to remind everyone in attendance to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy when providing comment. The board is not authorized to hear comments on contested cases or other educative proceedings or personnel matters. The board has developed policies and procedures to process concerns about programs, curriculum, learning material, and personnel. Thank you for attending our meeting. I don't have anybody recognized in the audience. Do we have any presentations today?
Just during the meeting itself.
Okay. Are there any corrections or deletions?
There are none, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Agenda item B, the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on it? I just have one question. With that whole new policy that we have due to the state legislature on out of district.
On 3141.
Yeah, are the numbers coming in? Is that going to be about normal, or is it an area of concern that we're having? Or
No, I don't think it's going to be an area of concern. They're all coming in right now. And so as they move in, Rebecca's just making sure she's got a file kind of organizing everything for our August meeting. So at that time, then we'll go ahead with approval at that time, as you know.
Okay.
And then once those are approved by you, then they'll go to Moses and he'll fill out the necessary paperwork for OPI at this time. But yeah, no, everything seems to be coming in as normal. Haven't seen any right now where we've had to, where the principals didn't approve them. So.
Okay. All right. Before I entertain a motion to accept the unanimous consent agenda, is there any board member with a request to remove any item from it? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve item B, the unanimous consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Kristen and seconded by Lorraine that we approve item B as presented. Does any member of the audience wish to speak to the motion? Any member of the board wish to speak to the motion? Not all those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Sorry, guys. Phone was not on silent. Okay, agenda item D2, electric bus tax credit.
We have a C.
Oh, wait, hold on. I went too far.
Right there on the back page.
Safe return to schools.
There are no changes to the safe return to schools and continuity of service plan.
Okay. Agenda item D1, the electronic vote for MPSBA business.
Yes, I recommend that you approve Moses to cast the vote for Havre Public Schools following this meeting. As you can see listed in your packet, kind of the note on this. We were discussing this earlier, and the big thing was, if you notice the section on the revenue, so it talks about the dues revenue estimate has been adjusted pursuant to the motion of MTSBA board to ensure no increase in dues revenue for the fiscal year 25 and 26. There was estimated to increase the dues by 52,000, and this proposal is to adjust the formula to reduce it 7,000. So there'll actually be a reduction. So that was kind of the biggie with this. I shared with Tim if there's some of the specifics, nomination of, with some specific names for, Region 9 director, things like that. If you wanted us to dig a little deeper, Moses and I could do that before the special session meeting if you'd like. But again, really kind of the big one is just number 3. So with your approval with this, Moses would go ahead and fill this out electronically for Havre Public Schools.
Any questions or comments on that?
And it's one typically that happens yearly. And from what I
Yeah.
understand, Tim, then usually the clerk does this for the
Yeah,
board.
unless we have a real
Okay.
active member in FTSBA, which anybody super active member that wants to vote for us. Or we can have most of it. One more thing on your agenda then. Any questions or concerns, or does anybody need any additional information? We would place it on the next agenda. Okay, if not, so we would want to. So we can have Moses vote for us, and then if any of them are no's, then we would separate that one out in particular. As long as they're all yeses, then we would just have him vote. If not, if there's a no, then we need to pull that one separate from the group. So if anybody wants to make a motion.
I'll make the motion. I recommend that we approve Moses Dion to cast the vote for Havre Public Schools following the July 9th meeting as presented for MTSBA business.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Lorraine and seconded by Kristen that we approve Moses to vote for the district after the July 9th meeting on the MTSBA business items as presented. Is that correct? Okay. Any member of the audience wish to speak to the motion? Any member of the board wish to speak? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Agenda item D2, electric bus credit.
Okay. So we're going to have, I've got Aaron and Colton are here tonight. So Brett Duvall, is going to zoom in and chat with us about trans tax and kind of what, his company does. Just to give you a little background on this. So this came to my attention about a month ago that Havre Public Schools may not have fully taken advantage of the tax credits that we could have when it came for our electric buses. And so I had Scott kind of dig up all the information on this. We sent it over to Brett. Brett felt like, nope, based on the time when your buses actually rolled into service, which was January of 23. So even though we purchased them before then, they actually went into service in January of 23. So he said, I feel like you guys would still qualify for this tax credit. And then I sent the information over to, as you know, Shanna was, Flores was our interim business manager. She reviewed the information. She felt like this was a good situation for our school district as well. But I thought in everybody's best interest, I would just have Brett kind of be able to explain this in a little more depth for all of us. And then my recommendation would be that if you feel good with it, that we move forward with this opportunity. Hey, Brett, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, good. So my company, Transex Advisors, we've been doing a lot of work with school districts over the past several years relating to specific IRA or IRS tax credits. Historically, tax exempt entities like school districts have been kind of excluded from a lot of IRS tax credits because you all don't have the school district rather doesn't have a tax liability with which to claim. But in the past couple of years, we've seen changes and updates to the law. So in regard to this tax credit, this is something that came from the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed a couple of years ago. And it specifically provided a refundable tax credit, which is a pretty rare incentive in the tax world. So what this does is if you don't have a tax liability with which to claim a tax credit, any amounts that are unclaimed are refundable in a direct deposit scheme from the IRS to the taxpayer. So for a school district like you all, assuming that you qualify for the tax credits, it's 100% refundable. So that means that the payments go directly to your school district. So with regards to the electric buses, any electric bus that is made by a qualified manufacturer that's been placed into service from January 1, 2023 onward is eligible for a tax credit. The tax credit's up to $40,000 per electric bus. And the whole purpose of the program is to kind of help buyers of electric buses help kind of bridge the total cost where grant funding may fall short. So, as was mentioned, I reviewed some of the payment details related to the electric buses, and it looks like the district was out roughly about, a little bit more than $50,000 per bus. So in this scenario, the district would qualify for the full $40,000 per electric bus, so $80,000 in total. But that's kind of the factual background. Are there any questions about this so far?
So Brett, it looks like in the contract for the $80,000 that we would be eligible for, then you guys would take 25% for any, it sounded like previous credits we would have been eligible for, as well as 20% for any current credits that you identify. Is that correct?
Yes, sort of. So it's really when we go in and we do a full review, we kind of identify opportunities and we place them in the kind of two different categories, either categories that are open under statute, or another category are opportunities that are kind of going forward that exist after the contract is executed. So with regards to the two electric buses here, it falls under the previous category of historic opportunities. So opportunities open under statute. So it only gets assessed that one fee of 25%. The reason we kind of do it that way is because to get started on these projects, there's a lot more legwork involved. So we have to get the district registered as a claimant with the IRS. And we also have to be concerned about the statute. So for this particular opportunity, it's only a 1-year statute for the buses that were placed into service in January 2023, we have to file something by October. And that means I need to get the district registered to claim the tax credits, within the next couple of weeks. So It's just, there's a lot more front end work. So that's why we kind of have those two different fees. Going forward, if your district did bring in additional electric buses in the future, any of those buses that qualify for the tax credit would be assessed at the reduced rate of 20%, largely because I don't have to go through the registration process again for you all, and I can kind of plan things out from a statutory deadline perspective.
And Britt, can you explain a little bit about your specialization in this area, as opposed to like a local tax accountant in our area?
Of course, yeah. So my background is, I'm a tax attorney, so I'm located here in Atlanta. My firm has been operating for several years now, and what we do is we focus on a very niche area of tax law around the areas of transportation and fuel. So historically we've done a lot of work with big buyer and users of fuel. So we've done a lot of work with domestic and international airlines that fly to the U.S., transportation logistics companies, things of that nature. But in the past few years, we realized that school districts were an overlooked area largely because, as I mentioned at the top, that a lot of the new tax laws have kind of expanded in terms of eligibility. And so there's a lot of incentives available for school districts related to the transportation operations that were just being overlooked because the assumption was that your districts don't qualify because you're tax exempt. So how could you qualify for a tax credit, right? And so what we've been able to do is to kind of identify the opportunities and build out an administrative process to claim it. So to date, we've worked with probably about 80, probably a little bit more than 80 different school districts across the country on clean energy incentives. So there are kind of two big buckets there. One are incentives related to electric vehicles and incentives related to vehicles that run on alternative fuel. So we filed hundreds of different claims for this and secured millions of dollars for school districts. So we've had a lot of success. And to be quite honest with you, I've talked with hundreds of different school districts across the country. I don't think I've spoken with one yet who says that they have another company or a local advisor that's helping out with these incentives, because again, it's such a niche area of tax law, and this specific opportunity is just so overlooked throughout the market. So in other words, we're kind of the only one in town doing this for school districts.
So with the contract being 3 years, Mr. Gum, are we looking at partnering with other aspects with this, or is a 3-year contract normal for trans tax then?
Brett, can you explain kind of the length of that, what that would typically look like? And then also maybe opportunities in the future. I think for us, it's one, we have also done some work to look at potentially obtaining more buses in the future. So would that be something that we could just kind of roll over if that was the case?
Yeah, of course. So kind of stepping back a little bit and taking a big picture view of kind of our relationship with each and every client, including Havre School District. My job is to go in and identify any and all opportunities that are available to you all. And after I do my review and I've identified the opportunities, my job is to report out to your finance department, for example, what it is that I found, what the opportunity is, and what is the materiality, how much is it worth to the school district. Based on that report out, the school district is in the decision-making authority to decide whether or not they want to go after the opportunity. So in that sense, we kind of only go after issues that when we specifically get the green light. So in another way to say this is that for any opportunity I identify, there's no obligation that TransTax goes after it. There may be some situations where internally they feel your finance department may feel like it's comfortable going after an issue. So, for example, if I find that the district has been paying federal excise tax on its diesel invoices for its diesel school buses, and it wants to file a refund for that, it can choose to use TransTax and use my services and my experience, or it can take that in-house. Our contracts are designed to give your school district flexibility to utilize my experience and my expertise when it feels the need to do so, or I'm just kind of a free quality assurance check for in terms of the transportation operations for the school district. The reason that we have it set out at 3 years, it's just kind of a standard term. I've adjusted it longer or shorter, but 3 years has kind of just been an average. And again, this kind of just lets us be in a position to provide that expertise if and when the school district does add additional electric buses down the road, or if it decides to look at other opportunities that have attendant incentives attached to it. So, we just kind of throw out 3 years, but there's no real rhyme or reason to it in any way. We just kind of relook at ourselves and an outside resource available to the school district if and when it wants to use it.
So I know we've been looking at buses before, so to kind of use this as an example, if we were to procure electric buses through a grant and get a tax credit, even though we've already done that homework and they've helped us with stuff, do we still owe them 20% of what we already knew? Even though they may not have helped us find that information? Or is it literally 20% of anything they help us find?
I believe, Brett, that would be 20% of anything that you help us find. Is that correct?
Not per se. It's really more 20% of anything that I file on behalf of the school district. So any of these opportunities, so for the electric bus incentive, this is a claim process. So what this means is that the district needs to file a refund claim directly with the IRS. What my team and myself, what we do is we prepare all the supporting documentation. We get the district registered, like I mentioned at the top. I file the claims directly with the IRS. Down the road, the IRS agent is going to pick it up and do a kind of a closed audit, which is just a review of the claim itself. And I work directly with the IRS auditor to get that claim reviewed, answer any questions, and ultimately approved. So it's not just a situation of identifying the opportunity or filling out a form. It's a pretty involved process of 9 to 12 months of work, wherein the end result is a direct payment to your school district. So to answer your question, I apologize. I'm not sure. I can't see nameplates or anything like that. But in regards to the question, no, it's not. We don't get paid for anything that we've identified. We only get paid based on what work we've actually done for the district. And that work specifically, again, is when we file a claim on behalf of the school district. And obviously, the school district is going to be well aware of what we're filing, what we're not filing.
Thank you for the clarification, Brett.
Yeah, of course.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
One of the comments I'll just note, I did ask Brian before, or Mr. Gum before the meeting, just if this contract had been reviewed by MTSBA, our attorney. I think any contract we enter into, I would like to see them review. But this has not been reviewed by them yet.
Correct.
I would echo that just because it is Georgia jurisdiction in the contract, and I don't know. Georgia.
We may have a little bit different. Our state might have things that are limit us on that on that pass. So.
Sure. Yeah, and you could make a motion just with that in there, in the motion that approval from MTSBA.
The last grants that we received for the electric buses that we got 2 years ago, was that now? 2 years ago that we got those electric buses, is that correct? Yeah. That was through a claim that was made, settlement that was done through Mercedes or Volkswagen. A German company regardless, is that correct? Can you speak to that at all by chance? Brett, do you know much about that incentive that we got a few years ago to speak of?
Yeah. So generally, if you all recall, there's kind of a situation where Volkswagen had built its U.S. vehicles with a kind of a software designed to cheat emissions checks. So the cars were polluting more than what they were reporting out whenever vehicles were going in for their emission checks. And so That was found out, and after a DOJ lawsuit and investigation, there was a settlement process. And so with that settlement process, it did a bunch of different things. Provided, if I don't know if anybody here has a Volkswagen electric vehicle, but if we provided a electric vehicle charging network, and Volkswagen also had to set aside funds on a state by state basis where they provide funds to go towards electrification. So the funds that you all got for these electric buses, that's a result of the Volkswagen Dieselgate emissions cheating scandal. So that's where that money came from.
And so it's my understanding that those particular types of grants or funding is not anything that you're going to be dealing with. Is that correct? We're going to be dealing strictly just with the IRS for tax credits more so. Is that correct?
Correct. So there are kind of two different incentives depending on when the purchase is made. So Volkswagen Settlement Fund, EPA Clean Bus, grant funding, all of that is what I term transactional support. So the idea is to kind of get you in the door, right? To make sure that you guys have, the support you need when you're thinking about making the choice to buy an electric bus. The IRS incentives are kind of post-transactional incentives. So you've already bought the buses, you've already paid for them. The IRS has just set up a different process to kind of get you additional funding to kind of take the sting out of those purchases as it was. So we are strictly focused on the post-transactional IRS incentive programs.
Okay. And so I guess, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit ignorant on some of this stuff, so I'm having a hard time keeping up with you. So I apologize if my questions are a little bit elementary, but so I guess when I'm around in a roundabout way, what I'm asking is if there are other incentives that come along that are like the Volkswagen incentive, that is something that you would not be dealing with at all. You wouldn't be taking 20% of any of that. That's something outside of your guys's jurisdiction, I guess.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, with the issue in front of you at the moment, no, that's not what we're discussing because again, you've all gone after this Volkswagen State Settlement Funds. But if we identify an issue down the road, like let's say there's a new program under the next Congress, for example, there's a new program and I report out to Brian's like, hey, here are some new incentives. Do you want help going after it or do you want to do that in-house? That kind of speaks to the way our contract is structured. If there's a program and I feel like I can secure that for you all and you want me to, I'm happy to help you. And it would, and if I do so, my contract provides terms for my compensation. But on the flip side, I can also identify, a new program, report it out to Brian, for example, and then he can do that internally. And I'm obviously not compensated for just kind of spot checking and bringing to your attention a new program. So just to be very, very clear, my firm is only receiving compensation for claims that we've actively filed on behalf of the school district. And we're also only getting compensated, and I should have mentioned this up top, we're only compensated for our work after your school district receives the tax credit. So, this will be a 9 to 12 month process. I'm not asking for any upfront payment at all. And if we were to go through with this process and it is defective in some way and it's rejected, or the IRS just completely disagrees and rejects it, there's no invoice coming from me to your district. I only send an invoice for my work if and when your school district receives the funds. So that's how we operate. We found it to be kind of a nice balance for our school district clients because I know that you don't have, a loose, $10, $20, $30,000 sitting around to pay consultants to come in and do work when the benefit is a year down the road. So we've kind of found that this is kind of a nice way to balance interest, incentivize us to maximize any incentives for your district, but also making sure that you have the flexibility to go for it without needing to pay contractors up front.
Okay, that answered my question. Thank you, Brett.
Yes, thank you.
Which also, like when Brett was talking about just different opportunities that would continue to arise too, it might be nice to have just kind of some thoughtfulness on somebody who's watching that all the time. For instance, in Brett's case, that's something he does. So just kind of those heads up on those opportunities for us to say, hey, this might be something you really want to take advantage of or not. But I like hearing that unless we specifically move forward with the claim, we're more maybe just obtaining good information and then we can kind of go from there.
Correct.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All right, would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve agenda item D2, the electric bus tax credit contract with Transcat with the after the approval by our lawyers at MTFB.
Okay. Is there a second?
I second it.
It's been moved by Garrett and seconded by Tyler that we approve agenda item D2 electric bus tax credit after the lawyers at MTSBA approve it. Does any member of the audience wish to speak to the motion? Does any member of the board wish to speak to the motion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Brett.
All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Agenda item D3, the Teamster agreement.
I recommend that Havre Public Schools approves the Teamster agreement for both 2024 and 2025 school years. As we jump into the agreement, on this committee was represented was myself, Garrett, and Tyler. So we had several meetings with the Teamsters negotiating committee. Some of the key points in the contract that have been adjusted that I thought I would just share with you is, as you note, the language has been put into that during the duration of the CBA, Havre School District and the Teamsters will meet and discuss insurance if it goes above 8%. They wanted that in there, similar to our paras and teachers. So that has been placed in there. You'll notice the insurance contributions listed below on 10.2. So some of those adjustments went up to meet, if you notice, like in the fiscal year 25 is at 900 and fiscal year 26 is 918 for that monthly contribution. And then in the other group with transportation and the mechanic side with our maintenance, it is at 918 for both fiscal year 25 and 26. Some of the other things that were placed in here, you can see under addendum B1, the longevity rates, as those have been adjusted. The meal pay, we ended up going with the state rate. So when you see those numbers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's the state rate that we agreed to. So that wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And then on addendum A1 for fiscal year 25, when you look through clerical, food service, custodian, transportation, and maintenance, they'll be receiving a 4% raise. And then in fiscal year 26, they'll receive a 2% raise. So Garrett and Tyler, do you have anything else you wanted to add in about that process or any adjustments? Or
we cleaned this one up over the last few years. There was some historical stuff in it from contracts past, where like this group got that and this group didn't, or this part of that group, because they didn't take a wage increase, so they got more in health benefits, things like that. So this one kind of got rid of some of that historical language, so it's not there anymore. So kind of one of the groups that wasn't a part of that, did not say they get caught up now, I guess. So it kind of gets everything cleaned up and cleaner for, there was a lot of historical knowledge being thrown out during negotiations of, well, it's because of this and because of that, and now should be more streamlined for whoever comes in. There's not trying to learn history on it before you get carried away. I think that's the big one.
Yep, no, agreed, Garrett. That was the big one. And there was a very large disparity between the two different groups. And so you can see, well, then they go to 900, 918, and then the following year they're both at 918. Then that was really nice, we felt too, because there was such a large disparity. You could, within those groups, when we were going back and forth, you could see there was a lot of upset feelings at times just based on why was there such a difference between our two groups. And so we felt like that was then coming back with a fair representation for both groups. So
Yeah, it's kind of like two groups within one.
Yeah.
That you're working with, and it was a big clarity of trying to do one with the other. It was a challenge. One of the other things to call out was the mechanic. We were able to kind of bump that pay to make it a little more competitive. I've seen the sign at the state as you drive up the hill now, they're offering like $30 an hour for mechanics. So we've kind of come into similarity with them, with state wages. So we're not, underpaying, losing anybody. We're staying competitive so that we can keep our own staff that keep everything running. So those were a couple of the big ones I remember out of it.
mm-hmm.
I was impressed when I read through this with the longevity of the people. In
Right.
each of the different groups. That speaks highly of them and their administration. And I was really impressed with them.
Right. Yeah, no, thanks, Lorraine. That was one, as you know, trying to really incentivize then staying with Havre Public Schools versus jumping ship. Kind of like what Garrett said is, we realize then our ability to keep, great people is based on those kind of things, is why should they come back each year? And so hopefully we're creating a system that works through at every level with that.
So on the insurance there, in the original one, it listed part-time. What are we, is that, how is that being adjusted there? On 10-2, insurance contributions, full-time was listed as one and part-time was listed as another. There is anything under the part-time? Let's do it with the clerical, food service, and then the drivers.
Right.
I don't believe there is any part-time.
I was going to say, don't think so.
Okay. I believe that's what it ended up being.
Yeah.
I think there was also a board policy that said that you weren't eligible for health coverage
If
you
you're
were
underneath that,
part-time.
yeah.
And so this brings it into
Okay.
line with the board policy that part-time are not eligible for.
Well, I was thinking that, but there was no anything there, and I was like, just wanted to make sure that we were.
Right. No, and Kristen, that's a good point. I think we did that with our other groups. We had that similar situation crop up with Harris. Yep.
I guess one thing I'll just note, on the notation that for the health insurance, it will increase if the, premiums are above 8%. And, I'm just concerned what that's going to mean for our district going forward in years to come with health insurance rates going up. And that language in our CBAs. So I understand why they wanted it in there because it was in the others. I just think as a kind of broader topic, that's something that's definitely a concern after seeing how our rates went up this year.
Yeah, this one was unique because we had just converted all the people off the Washington Trust one. And their plan was only raised like 2%. It was a normal rate. But the other one, yeah, it jumped
Yeah.
tremendously. And that was kind of one of the sticking points. So that was, yeah.
Any other questions or comments on it? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve agenda item D3, the Teamsters agreement for the years 2024 through 2025 and 25 and 26, 2-year.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Garrett and seconded by Tyler that we approve agenda item D3, Teamsters agreement for 2024, 2025, and 25-26. Does any member of the audience wish to speak to the motion? Does any member of the board wish to speak to the motion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Agenda item D4, out-of-state travel request.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this one's a little unique as well. As you know, we were moving forward. At the time when this request came in, you'll notice Sarah Lynn Stanley's name is on this, as well as Principal Kraski's for this request. She was our ag teacher here, who also is our FFA advisor. She since then took a job in Frenchtown. However, we were able to fill that almost immediately with Allison Denton. So she's going to be joining our team for this next school year. In fact, as you approved her last time, she's already up and running with the kids and working some stuff. We've done some extra days just based on the fair and some uniquenesses. So we're excited to have her on board. Principal Kraski and I visited with Allison. She wanted to jump in with this. Sarah Lynn had already been doing work in terms of fundraising with our FFA and kind of moving forward with this project. So when I asked Dustin about this, if we wanted to wait, get a different letter from Allison, Allison was good with this. So he felt like we could stay with the same letter as she's going to jump on board, and she's good taking the kids on this convention, as well as he fully supports it. So he didn't see a need to adjust any of these letters. So when you see Sarah Lynn Stanley, that's kind of what happened, how it came to why her name's still on this instead of Allison. So.
I know I emailed you, Mr. Gum, so thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
That was my one concern is
Yep.
we have a previous employee making the recommendation or the request. Is the new one on board? I can't imagine they wouldn't be, but do we want something in writing saying they are before we approve it? But if the administration's already handled that, then yeah, I think that's good.
Any other questions or comments? Now, did they do all their own fundraising for this
Correct.
through different grants and stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. If not, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve item D4, the out-of-state travel request for the FFA organization as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Kristen and seconded by Lorraine that we approve agenda item D4, out-of-state travel request for FFA as presented. Does any member of the audience wish to speak to the motion? Does any member of the board wish to speak to the motion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. We are now at the public comment portion of our meeting. Yep, okay. This is an opportunity for any member of the audience to bring to the attention of the board questions or relevant comment concerning school district matters not on the agenda. Board may not take any action on matters brought to the attention of the board unless specific notice of that matter is included in a properly noticed agenda. Therefore, in the public comment portion of the meeting, the board will not discuss or take any action, but may refer a matter presented to a future agenda. If you have comments, please come to the microphone so that the board can hear you. Please note that the board is bound by ethical practice, district policy, negotiated agreements, and Montana statute to protect the rights of its employees. Are there any persons present wishing to comment at this time? Seeing as there is none, we'll move to agenda item E1.
Okay. So the first part of the superintendent's report, what I'd like to talk to you about is the Havre Public Schools daycare. So when kind of diving into what our current contract looked like, Holly, myself, as well as both of our daycare providers met a couple times on this to try to get a hold on why are we losing almost $10,000 a year with this program. So we came up with a couple things and kind of reviewing the information. So we found out that we are typically running between 11 to 12 students when we can have up to a capacity of about 17. So for the last couple of years, we've been a little shy on numbers, as well as the rates that we were charging were far below kind of where that state average is in terms of rates. So Holly did a great job of kind of researching where the state rates are. We had also Rose go out and get just kind of a pool and look at what are the rates locally around in Havre so that we could try to come up with a way to really gauge when we adjust these rates, what's a fair look at this, right? And so for Holly and I, our end game with this, as well as for Rose and Jenny, was to not come out and turn it where then you're seeing a substantial increase, like we're making a bunch of money off this, but at the same time, we really should be able to exist with this program, right? So we need to be able to find a way to continue to fund this, because the idea is to have then our employees be able to want to stay with us and work with us, take advantage of this program. So the adjustments that we made, rather than losing $9,800 a year, we're going to come out right at about $10,500. So just enough to kind of keep the program moving in the right direction and allow our employees to take advantage of this program. So in the contract with those adjustments, the language we made, and I brought an example of the Little Pony employee daycare with us. We just tried to adjust it enough so that we would just come out enough to sustain the program. We also added in the ability for school board member children as well as coaches within so if they're a coach within the system, but they don't work for Havre Public Schools directly, like as a teacher, a para, custodian, what have you, but they coach for us, that we're going to allow their children the opportunity to come into Little Pony Daycare as well. So try to incentivize also getting our numbers up to really justify those two providers versus just having one. Because that was another look then, boy, we'd have to maybe only have one provider, and then those numbers would have to jump back down instead of that 17, more like that 10 to 1-ish type ratio. So we made the adjustments just enough to make this work and feel like we're incentivizing people to take advantage of this as well.
Any questions or anything, Mr. Gum? Did we get any response from those that are currently using the daycare on the adjustment rate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been a
Haven't
while.
heard.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And then next, so I wanted to just kind of keep everyone up to speed on the athletic budget. As you know, so our finding from the audit, that was the big finding that we had, that we needed to bring that account up to zero out that balance by the time we ended the current year, right, which was June 30th. So we ended up, by the time this was kind of at its peak, it was at 147,000. Just so that everyone's on the same page, we were able to zero that out, as well as put some money in there for the future. So I worked with Shan on this extensively to take a look at, through a variety of funds, where could we not only zero this out, but then also what do we need to do going forward for the future? So my big concern on this was that we have a way that, as we look at this in the future, hopefully we're rectifying this situation from happening again. A lot of, we found that there could have been some potential situations that occurred just within the coding of where money was being pulled for hotels, transportation, things like that. So, and certainly know that this $147,000 issue did not occur over 1 year. So this was over several years of accumulating situations that kind of came to a head. So as we went through to try to then not only reduce this deficit as we move forward, we're going to be looking at things. I've visited with Mark Irvin. We've had a lot of conversations, Principal Kraske and myself, just in looking at Moses, and I already, with him jumping on board, have discussed ideas with this in terms of what does that look like moving forward. So we've actually set up a meeting with Kylene, Moses, myself, Mark, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with understanding where we correctly coding all of the funds, where they come in and out of, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Mallory will also be a part of that. Be looking at, in terms of meals when the ponies go out, kind of setting up a set amount for how that's going to look. There's some other adjustments we can look in the future too, that as Dustin and Mark and I've kind of talked through this, we wanted to see if now that this is rectified over this 3 years, and we adjust some small things, we don't necessarily want to jump out immediately and adjust activity rates for the kids. That's certainly a possibility, right? Looking in terms of travel, they've talked about also adjusting from Havre always being in the east, potentially going back to a central division. So in terms of games and travel, there may be some adjustments with that. So there's a variety of things we can do. And fundraising certainly is another part of that puzzle, included in the upcoming coaches meeting that Mark's going to have with all of his people. We have some set fundraising guidelines. Shanna had found when she was here that we had Havre Public Schools had some really good guidelines that I read through, and Mark and Dustin and I kind of talked about and said, I think these would be great to share with our coaches to make sure when they're going out that we're on the same page, right? That people who are our corporate sponsors, we're not touching them, right? And it's got kind of a series and a progression on how that looks. So as we start out the new year now with money in the positive, we're looking to hopefully see that the little adjustments we're making are paying off. If not, certainly with Moses's help, he and I have kind of talked through a couple things on some bigger picture levels that we could institute. But as you know, we went out to our community and asked for the levy. That was not successful. So we're also trying to be thoughtful about what are we just, asking our parents to do in terms of raising prices on stuff immediately out of the gate as well. So we're trying to kind of strike a balance and make sure that on our end, we're doing all the little things right first, see how those adjustments go before making those larger scale adjustments, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay. The next one also, I want to give you an update on the high school budget. So as it's in just Moses's first week, he's been great coming into my office. We jumped into a bunch of stuff immediately out of the gate, which was really helpful, I think, on both of our ends. We could share information back and forth. But we made some adjustments where we hadn't been coding some of that information correctly. So we're going to have 14 teachers now in the high school, which is going to give us more flexibility in that budget, is going to be coded a little differently. along with Jeremiah Nitz's salary. A third of that can be coded from the district level because he's our safety coordinator for the district, as well as Mark Irvin is also going to be the activities director slash 504 coordinator for the district. So that gives us some more flexibility in the high school budget as well. So as Moses and I've talked through that, that brings that threshold number down substantially from where we were really concerned about how tight the high school budget was versus the elementary. So that gives us a lot more flexibility in the high school budget. So I think that's going to be good. And then in terms of ESSER, so as we went through, Scott got his crew jumping on that stage project like we wanted. And the guys went to town and already have that situation handled. They're just now painting and handling that portion, but they already took care of that. Well, the stage project, if you remember, we set aside when you approved that this spring, 25,000 for that project. The project's going to come to a little just over 5,000 to get it done. So when they got underneath it and examined everything, it was a lot less work than they anticipated, which was awesome. So then he goes, well, what do you think about this? You know, we still have, because those funds have kind of been dedicated to the high school at that point. We do have a couple of leaks in the high school roof. Is there a possibility? So I visited with the people I worked with ESSER funding at OPI. And so I wrote a new scope document. It was already approved. So we're moving forward. So now we're able to take then that almost $20,000. So we don't lose any of that money that has to be spent by the 30th and use it to fix the roof in the high school. So that was positive. And then lastly, so the MSUN structure that sits next to Blue Pony Stadium. I don't know if all of you remember when you were there during graduation, right? The old beer garden, if you will, that sits outside of our stadium. When Kelly was there and Lorraine was there with me, it's been tagged. The graffiti on it is pretty horrendous at this point. Scott and I went inside of it. It's been used, you know, for just about anything you can imagine under the sun on the inside of that. So Dustin and I really were like, we would like that structure gone as we move forward into jumping into football season. So we contacted both the mayor as well as Steve Chavilicek, who actually owns the land. Kegel and Steve were both great with our crew taking that down. So we're going to scrap that all the way down. If any of the lumber is usable, we're going to use it in our woods program at the high school, but we're going to get rid of all the metal and stuff out to Pacific Steel. So that will be cleared and ready to go for the ponies come August. So we won't have that eyesore anymore. So that'll be good.
I'm assuming MSU Northern's going to be paying us to take that down then. Is that correct?
At least we can get rid of it.
Yes, that's probably the end game, Jake.
Is that all on your side? Okay.
Yep.
Announcements from the chair as we have our committee people assignments for the next year. Included was it 20? Did you guys get a copy of this?
Yes.
It should have been in the back.
It's in the packet.
Okay, so there was last year's assignments and then what we have upcoming for the next year. Everybody ready to volunteer? Okay, so there's the county transportation. That one's already done. That was the elementary. Kevin did that. Kevin and Scott did that. Yep.
I guess I just would like to make one comment quick too. I see looking at the 23-24 that Tyler De La Vega is not on any of those. So I think he needs to step up his game a little bit for the.
Yeah, I don't see his name. One of our big ones this coming year will be the collective bargaining agreement, negotiating with HEA. Is there anybody that would like to volunteer for that?
Which one are we on? Did you say?
The second one, the HEA collective bargaining agreement. Yep.
I wouldn't mind continuing to stay on there. I've been on there a couple of years.
Okay. I would like to be on that one. Is there anybody else that would like to be on that?
I think that's a good one to have chair and vice chair on regardless. Like, I think it should just be chair and vice chair, not three members.
Well, the reason we have the three members is in case somebody can't make it. Then we've got two, then we have.
Yeah, I know,
two
but it
board
should be listed as chair, vice chair, and an additional
Oh.
member.
Oh,
I guess in your template,
Oh,
I think having chair and vice chair on that committee is, because that's the majority of our staff, I think.
And I'm willing to continue to serve on that committee.
Well, you didn't get a choice, I would just
That's-
I think she pulls rank on you, Gary. You don't want to watch.
I know.
would anybody like to be on the extracurricular, collective bargaining agreement? For the stipend?
I could stay on.
Garrett, okay,
I would stay on it as well.
and then we have the para collective bargaining agreement. Would anybody like to be a part of that negotiating group as well?
I nominate Kevin.
Kevin?
As tribute.
Okay, I like it. And Kevin can be on that one. Kelly, would you like to be on that?
And then, Tim, did we decide, as I'm jotting this down too, then on the HEAU and Kristen, and then did we decide for a third or? just-
Lorraine.
And then Lorraine.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And then Garrett and Kristen will do the extracurricular.
Okay.
Kevin, Kelly Jake, do you want to be on?
I was on it last time, I believe, and it was fine. That'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, because we didn't negotiate last year on that, correct? The year before?
All we did this last time was the, insurance piece.
Okay.
And then we have the Education Foundation. And this one, we probably need to get a little bit of clarification and guidance as far as how this committee would look.
Cause I know we didn't we already approve Kristen as one?
So,
Kristen's the liaison to the,
yeah,
To go to their.
to
board
go to their meetings.
yeah, she's the liaison to go to their,
Board representative.
is our board representative. This one is,
The idea of the committee set up was that if the foundation had things, that you have, you guys get together and direct the foundation and you do it just for Christmas if you want. But the committee get together and look at ideas and say, where are opportunities for the foundation to go out the district? Or the foundation to go through president or the committee as a whole and say, here's opportunities we're seeing. What would you like to do as a board? And then we need to bring it to a board meeting. That was the idea.
right, yeah.
And we met a few times, because this was last year too. I think it was Lorraine, Kristen, and I sat down. We met a few times and talked big picture and kind of what direction is the foundation looking for fundraising aspects and things like that. And we kind of shared where our strategic plan and things played in to where we were kind of trying to play the same, and then find out, I think Northern came and spoke at a couple of them.
Yep.
And they
Yeah,
talked
so we-
their big picture to where
Yep.
we were kind of on board with everything.
So, and so this one will be a separate meeting of just kind of these people. If there's clarification, they might have the foundation come, but this will predominantly be a four-person committee.
Okay.
Meeting, not necessarily with the entire group of,
Yeah, they have a smaller
Foundation.
group that comes.
Mhm.
It's not their full.
It's just our thing.
Yeah,
well, and I think this one would be more, if there's something that they want brought to this group, then this
Yeah.
group would talk about it and then have Chris and then take it back to your group, versus having the kind of a separate meeting.
You want to just keep then those same people?
You know, who was
I
that?
have no issues with it. It was me,
Yeah,
Lorraine,
Garrett.
and Kristen.
Okay, are you guys okay with that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
I have a template question.
yep,
Should we always have the HPS education representative on that one with two other board members?
I think that's probably the best avenue to go is for, who's ever that representative to be there, the two board members. That way we get the direct information that they discussed at their meeting.
I'm just thinking for next year when we have to go through
Yeah,
this. It's
no, I
like,
think
oh,
that's-
that person knows they're on this committee as well, I guess.
Right. Okay, and then we have the curriculum review for the science. Are we doing the physical education as well, or just science? So it would PE and could go with math. Right. Okay. Okay, but that'll have to, you'll kind of look as that as we get into it a little bit. Okay, so we need science and social studies then. For sure, and we'll see, and fine arts. Is fine arts an expensive one? All right, so who would like to do, we have three. Who would like to do science?
I actually wouldn't mind getting in on the science. I just know that my schedule is obviously not conducive to making things at 3 o'clock in the afternoon
Right.
or 3:30 or 4. What's that? I get 1 day a week off. So if it's on those days, that's great. But I know a lot of times that doesn't end up working for scheduling.
A lot of times. Yep. So Jake, if I can speak to that. So a lot of times on those committees, try to hammer those out on Monday nights.
Okay. And Mondays
And after,
currently,
so typically I kind of adjusted it to go to 4:15 because just for when then other committee members too, like our teachers and stuff, that way it gives them a little more time to get over there. So kind of we're going 4:15 to 5:15.
Mhm. I mean, right now I currently have Mondays off. So I mean,
Okay.
if it stays on Mondays, I can make every one of them. If it's
Okay.
on Tuesdays, if I get off at 5:30, so
And if Holly, if you decided, since that'd probably be one that you'd be running then, if that works for you.
and I also understand that things need to be adjusted at times because of the larger picture, but
Sure.
I also hate committing to something and then not being able to make it
Sure.
as we saw on the other committee. I was on the climate committee this last year. Ended up getting moved off Mondays there a couple times and I just couldn't make it. So,
Sure.
but
You want to be on that one too, Doc?
Okay. Anybody else want to be on the science area? What's that?
I can do that.
Okay. And then we have. Are you pretty sure we're gonna do social studies? Okay, but we'll add science in, because we gotta get it done. Okay. Okay, perfect. Would anybody, I think if we divide that out into a couple different groups of board members, I think it makes it a little bit more doable. Because I'm assuming it's not gonna be one night to look at all three. Probably not. You're probably not gonna look at all three in one sitting. No, okay. Right. Okay. Could we get two per the other ones for social studies and fine arts? And then every board member would be on just one of them.
Put me on neither.
Okay. Do you have a preference?
I'll do social studies.
Okay. Do you want to do two committees? Well, I'm still gonna call. But I'm always gonna call you last. Well, I would like to do the fine arts as well, so we'll have three on that, two on social studies. And Tyler wants to do two. Professional development. Does anybody want to volunteer for that? And that's
What's
help.
that look like time frame wise, wonder we,
I have served on that committee the last 2 years and I would recommend it to anybody. It's probably the easiest committee. It's like one Zoom call. The people on this committee are phenomenal and they put together the whole August Institute. They present it to you, you review it, ask any questions and approve it basically. So.
It's usually one and done. on
I'll
that.
volunteer
That's
for
what
that
it's
one.
been.
I can too, if you need extra. So that wasn't.
Yeah, so we don't have to do that one again. Yeah.
So, and
Well,
just so you
unless
know, Kelly,
insurance
so
is
my secretary Rebecca tried to just clean this up to one page just based on what we'll have this year. Versus sometimes then it gets kind of rolled over of all the total. So
Right.
this is all the committees that will just be functioning next year.
So like if Teamsters has that insurance hike of over 8%, then that group, we would have someone go meet with them. And we'd make a separate committee for it.
See- Kristen on that, for the August Institute, then on that committee, is that it's pretty much all laid out? You don't have a lot of selections. There's not, we're offering these are ones we need to go over. Is it pretty much already all laid out?
The staff put together kind of that curriculum for the August Institute and kind of lay out what they want to do has been my experience. And then they present it and there's some discussion about dates of when it'll be offered and
Gotcha.
just different things like that. But it's more presented for your approval, I guess, if you
Sure.
will, before it comes to the board. As a
I
whole.
see. Yeah. When will that meeting typically take place?
December.
Probably. Oh, so this August Institute's already set up,
Yeah.
taken care of.
Yes.
Okay.
This is already-
Okay.
It's been in like
Yep,
March or April.
Okay.
They present to what they want to do in August. Yeah.
Gotcha. I could probably do that one, Tim, if you needed, if you're still short a person on that.
Do you want you and Jake then, Tim?
And if you got enough people, that's perfectly fine as well.
Kelly, you wanted to try that one? Okay.
Okay, so Kelly and Jake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet, I'm good. And then we have the interview committee, for our administrators, if we have an administrator that we need to replace.
We're not gonna have any of those.
We're not. Brian, you better keep them all, because we don't want to have to do another.
I feel I got lost there. I'm feeling it. They're good. They're good.
I have a question on that one. With the new having to record, wasn't there a concern that if we had this committee and we had too many, you'd have to record and then you might lose a candidate because, they don't want their interview recorded? I remember that concern last year when it was kind of
Yeah.
coming up and we had formed it. But I mean, obviously we wouldn't have a majority.
I think we have to have only two. Then on that. Versus three.
Right, and that's the way we did it last year, is we just limited it to
Two.
just
Yep.
to, two members,
Yep.
as available for that interview process.
So two is in chair plus one or chair plus
Just-
two?
Chair plus one.
Okay.
Total.
So,
So chair, so we need to adjust that to say
Yeah.
chair plus
Okay.
one
Okay.
additional.
And that one we were doing kind of as.
Yep. Yeah, and I wasn't on every single one of those. There was a couple that I was on, but there were some that I was not on based on availability of the rest of the board.
So do we just write it as two members selected by availability?
Yep, I think that's the best way to do it, is just two members selected by the board chair.
Yep.
And then would you want to check with MTSBA to make sure that that keeps us under half of the big report? Because we don't want that part of it.
That should be in policy too, I believe. I remember approving a policy that had to do with recording our meetings. So I bet you that's almost in one of our policies as well.
Yeah, it is, but I just want to make sure that we
Sure.
didn't miss something in the
check it.
policy.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And then the school climate,
Yeah, and we had, let's see, we had Jake and Kevin, right?
Yeah.
You guys want to stay on that?
Are we going to continue that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to. Yeah.
and those are Monday meetings now?
Yep, those are Monday meetings.
Yes.
Like this. Okay.
And
Um,
also on the county transportation.
Yep. Kevin's on that. He did it last year.
Mhm.
And Scott, and I think they meet next week, or do they meet this week? Next week,
At the end of the month.
end of the month.
End of the month, yeah. So, and I'm gonna have we're all gonna go along with Moses, myself. So I told Victoria just that to make sure the invite goes to all of us. That way we can all kind of understand.
Okay. And then if you want to type that up or
Mhm.
have somebody type that up, and then we'll send that out to everybody. So you can see which. Do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
Okay. And with that, we're at the end of our board meeting. I would entertain a motion to reconvene at our next regularly scheduled meeting, August 12th at 6:30, and our next special board meeting, July 23rd, 12:15 at Robbins.
First day of school for teachers, is that 19?
Yes, for the welcome back is gonna be on the 19th. Yep. Yep.
8 o'clock.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Oh, Kelly beat that.
We are adjourned. Tyler motioned and Kelly seconded.